Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We are buzzing as always, still coming in hot from Buenos Aires. Guys, by the time this epi airs, we're going to be hella close to Dev Connect. Please do slide into my DMs, cha-cha slide, send me an email. Many of you have it. And if you will be here for Dev Connect, I'd love to meet you guys. Steaks and drinks on me in Buenos if you do like red meat. And if you like red wine, it's a great place, especially if you like treats. Also, bit of a fun fact, Buenos is obviously well known for the steak, but I would honestly argue it has the best ice cream in the world. I know that's a bit of a hot take. Italy would probably say they have the best ice cream. Dead ass though, I honestly think Buenos, and well, not just Buenos, but I think Argentina has the best ice cream in the whole world. Completely weird fun fact, and we'll get into that. But intro first, the one and only Robin Nordnes on the show today, founder and CEO of Raiku, the upgrade to Solana, enabling instant, predictable, and scalable transactions. Engineer, entrepreneur, decade of experience in fintech and distributed systems, has built projects going way back in the day, projects, you name it. He's done everything, early Ethereum projects to ventures tackling global financial access. Can't wait to get into Raiku. This is going to be an absolute banger. And I don't want to say fresh off a raise, but a very nice $13.5 million raise from the biggest dogs in the space, Pantera, Jump, Lightspeed, Anthony himself. This is going to be an absolute banger. Robin, welcome to the show, my friend. Pumped to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
I caught you mid-water gulp there.
Yeah, mid-water gulp, but thank you for having me. Looking forward to this one.
Pumped to have you on. You and I were talking about a couple of things before we went live here. Your accent is one, just for the listeners to get into that. You have one of the cleanest and crispiest accents, but you might be the first guest in almost 500 episodes where I honestly have no clue, because again, you are Norwegian, but you have a bit of Brit to you. You have a bit of South African. It's like, how are you so
a bit of a weird
good
one,
at
isn't it?
having a? It's clean though. Normally people where it could be from anywhere, it's like choppy and sort of be rude, but like sort of sloppy. Yours is crispy. I don't know how you have such a clean accent.
I can guarantee you that once Robin gets mad, the Norwegian comes out. You can very clearly tell. But it's funny because when you move around, you just pick up words and different ways of pronouncing words. So anyways, thank you though. I appreciate that.
Clean accent though. Clean accent. Look, a lot of stuff is going on in crypto right now. Guys, we're recording on Thursday, November 6th. This epi is going to air, 1 week later. Let's just start general crypto consensus present day. We don't need to get into price or anything, but it's a bit of a weird one. I mean, just about a month ago, we were looking like it was just gravy train up only. Again, we're not going to get into price, but sentiment seemed quite good. In present day, it's just like, it sort of seems like it's in the dump. Where's your head at? And of course, you can tie this into Solana because that's where you guys move and groove as well. But where's your head at in regards to the overall just sort of crypto markets and overall sentiment narrative right now?
That's a good question. The funny thing is, a journalist asked me today, I think it was yesterday, which token is worth buying and holding over a bear market. So it's clear that, people are picking up on that. Maybe there are some times we're going into which may not be, all optimistic. And, that simple answer, because I think everything else is not true, is like the only tokens worth holding is, which is tied to a project or a product which is solving a real world problem, which has adoption, and everything else is faff. And I think the problem is there's a lot of faff, isn't it? And how can you tell if it's real or not? And I think, obviously the deeper you're into the space, it'll be easy to call bullshit out. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of faff, which will, fade away. But I don't think this is like a crypto-specific problem. It's not, it's the same problem across many different sectors. The same with the AI, and the core root to the problem is not market sentiment of one particular ecosystem, for example, in crypto, but it comes down to the global markets in itself and where we're at there, because there's a lot of big changes, isn't it?
Yeah.
With the macroeconomic view. So that's what I would probably more look at. But personally, if you were to focus only on crypto, nothing really has changed, right? I don't think the prospects of seeing crypto thrive 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, that hasn't changed. The needs of customers and users, that hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. the prices, they may change, but that will always be the case.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
for me,
long
it's
term,
mostly the same. Yeah,
long term
exactly.
vision. Yeah.
Long term. And that's what you have to be, right? And I think it's easy to get caught up in the moment, in the details.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I'm not really
Okay.
sure if that really answered anything, but
No,
yeah.
hey, I like it because again, when I love this job being a host of this podcast because I get to talk to smokes who are a hell of a lot, folks, excuse me, who are a hell of a lot smarter than me, like you. And if our listeners can get a little snippet into that brain too, that's the whole point. That's why people listen to the show. Now, again, we don't do
I
price
wouldn't really say
action.
I'm
We don't
super
do price.
smart, but thank you.
We don't do price predictions. It's more just what's good. What do the people building think?
Yeah,
Speaking of builders, one thing that's been incredible to see, and I still love Ethereum, but the
me too, by the
exodus
way.
of builders, the exodus of builders from the Ethereum ecosystem over to the Solana ecosystem is something that I've seen in real time, and the people only see 2% of the inbound, requests that we have to come on the podcast and the folks that we want to have on the podcast. There are so many more builders who have left Ethereum and moved to Solana that hadn't been on the podcast. They're building right now a lot of people don't know about. What was your main reason? You don't need to shit on Ethereum. If you want to shit on Ethereum, go ahead, shit on them. But what was the main reason why you left building Ethereum to go to the Solana sort of, I don't want to say ecosystem, but just Team ETH to Team Solana?
Yeah, it's a good question. Out of frustration, out of desperation, I think. And the story behind that is I spent most of my time in crypto as a whole in Ethereum from late 2015 up into like mid 23. And
Oh, you were early. You were hella early.
yeah, it was early, it was different days.
Jeez.
We were all, early or late 2015 up until like 2019. It feels like we were all like running around like headless chickens trying to figure out, what fun stuff can we do? And that was fun. And as part of that, you got to work with many great teams and people, and you tend to pick up, learnings. When we got into like 21, 22, and some parts of 23, there was so much, new blood coming into the space because of, the money supply going crazy because of COVID and how the governments responded. And that created certainly a surplus of cash. And with that cash, you could see that, VCs funded a lot of new projects. Most of them, in my opinion, should not get funding, but, that's how it works. And what it led to is a lot of like false promises and a lot of noise. And I think the projects which should have gotten funding back then didn't, because it was just too much noise. And ultimately what this led to is a lot of, core infrastructure projects, which was at the time based on Ethereum, many of them had like decent, good ideas when it comes to what design principles they should adopt to solve XYZ problems. But it just led to a overall scaling strategy, which led to information fragmentation across the different networks, L2s and the L1, and that caused a whole lot of other problems. And ultimately, what we ended up doing was to solve problems for crypto, but not problems for the market that we want to facilitate and serve.
Yeah.
And at what point I just realized that fixing this is going to be very difficult, because you need to align many different ecosystem actors to, for simplicity, adopt one solution, for example, but you can't, because they have the different incentives. It's misaligned, and you just can't. But the good thing is, over that time, I had worked with different infrastructure projects which tried to solve, various scaling and efficiency problems, all differently with, different design principles. And from that, you get to see what works and what doesn't. And I wanted to see if we can adopt some of the, past learnings, but in a new network which didn't share these same limitations that Ethereum had, but we could make it radically more efficient to, make on-chain primitives powering more products and use cases by, extending it. So rethinking how a base network like Solana, but also like, Aptos and Sui and other networks should function and how users interact with them. Now, originally I didn't look just at Solana. It was also other L1s, but Solana stood out for many different reasons. And that's how we ended up here. But I think the core nature of the problem we wanted to solve was never really tied to Solana in the first place. It was tied to crypto as a whole. And Solana turned out to be the place to solve it in the most efficient and hopefully prospecting way. So yeah, that was a spiel, but that
No,
was a
I
question.
like it. I don't want to. I mean, heck, we could do a whole hour on this. I'm just I'm gonna blabble for a bit, and we'll get right into Raiku. But a couple of just things front of mind for me. Number one, and I've talked about this many times, the qualitative aspects of crypto matter more than most people think. Ethereum's present day still isn't
100%.
cool. Solana is cool. It's just like Web 2 brands. And I hate the term Web 2, Web 3, whatever. We'll call it TradFi. Like Robinhood is cool right now. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people use it. Yes, it's an incredible product as well and service and a great app. But being cool is something that can't be faked, right? Like you can never fake cool. You meet someone who thinks they're cool, wears all these kinds of clothes. You can tell if they're full of shit within seconds. Your bullshit radar goes off. That's something, authenticity in today's present, in today's day and age, it really matters more than ever because so many more people are faking it. So that's one thing. Secondly, I mean, you saw and I forget his name, my apologies, but one of the core Ethereum devs who was getting paid like 100K a year. I'm sure you saw that come out a couple of weeks ago. When I saw that, I was like, what? This guy could have made like millions. That is insane that he's only getting paid 100K. Sandeep comes out and shit talks them as well. So again, I think Vitalik's a genius. I think he's created a great load of capital for the world. I think he dresses like a clown, and I'd tell him to his face. But otherwise, I think the Ethereum Foundation dropped the ball, and I've said this as well. I do think there is a world where Ethereum's market cap could have perhaps even surpassed Bitcoin's if they would have done things a different way. I know that's a very hot take, but it could have happened. And obviously it's a woulda, coulda, shoulda. Just like, could I have bought Bitcoin in 2010? Sure, I could have, but I didn't. But again, I do think Ethereum, if executed almost perfectly, could be the number one crypto by market cap right now too.
True. I agree. And I still think that there is a case for Ethereum to achieve that, but also for Solana. But it comes down, I think, to leadership. Like this is, I think, often overlooked because you tend to look at the network from a technology standpoint or an adoption standpoint. But in a company, once you grow, the culture typically dilutes the purpose, essentially, the drive. And the only way to ensure that, roughly remains the same to best of efforts is by thoughtful and effective and clear leadership. And from everything that I know, heard from, friends that has been at the Ethereum Foundation and also others, that hasn't been the case. And this was really a thing that attracted me to Solana because it was an entirely different take on leadership from like a foundation standpoint, right? So Solana Foundation, because there's been many different discussions on how a foundation should operate, and different L1s have their own take on it. And I think the beauty of leadership behind Solana is that it's simple and clear. And that's what it should be. Because once your goal becomes complex and hard to understand, then that is when purpose dilutes, right? Because typically,
well said,
in like a company lifecycle, at least from what I've seen, is that it starts out to be very clear, and then it becomes widespread, and that's when you tend to lose people. That's a risk, and I think Solana's done a good job at keeping that up. But it is worth noting that it's a relatively young ecosystem compared to Ethereum. So I wouldn't say that is a risk that would never exist. It's something that you always have to stay on top of and be aware of. And from what I've seen, they are, which is great. And that's rare.
Well said. Robin, you're on a roll. Quick shout out to Prime XBT, sponsored the show. When we get back, we're going to take a deep dive into Raiku, get right into it, nitty gritty in the weeds with the knee-high shit-kicking boots on. Until then, huge shout-out to Prime XBT, longtime friends and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. We love the team at Prime XBT as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. Doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XBT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. Use the promo code CryptoNews50, that's CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, it's CryptoNews50, all in word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Now back to the show with Robin. Okay, let's jump into it. High level, how do you describe Raiku to someone sort of offline, online, in Solana, outside of Solana? What's the Raiku elevator pitch?
The simplest take, we allow you to essentially predict and plan for what you want to happen with your transactions, and that's it. Because once you allow for that, you change the game. And the reason for that is, right now, all of the transactions, doesn't matter what L1, it's all based on, optimism, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but what it means is you send a transaction and you hope that it will be executed upon and included when you want it. But if you can flip that and say, well, actually, this is when it will happen to a high probability, then you allow for so much more. And that's what we do at the very core. There's many other things, but that's the core, essentially. Did that make sense?
Okay. It does. But yes, and this is it's a tough and shitty question on my end to ask, because we do have a good chunk of the show who are rookies, who are getting into the space, right? So like I get this. We both get this. You a lot more than me, but I guess for the folks who aren't deep in the weeds, like Robin, I would say a lot of transactions don't go through, or if they do go through in a congested time, you have to spend more money, aka gas, to get that through. Raiku sort of fixes that problem. Sort of, maybe I'm on the right track there, but
yeah. So the reason why I started with the rather abstract, one sentence of we enable planning is because once that is enabled, then you can tackle so many different problems. For example, so right now, sophisticated market players, so basically trading bots, high frequency trading funds, etc., that sends lots of transactions to Solana, many of them end up failing. And the reason for that is it's optimistic. You don't really know when it will happen, so you try your best and increase your probability of it happening in the first place. So you send it over and over and over and over and over again, which means that you hurt the network, right? And you basically take up bandwidth, which could, in theory, be reserved for someone else, right? So you solve that by knowing and feeling good that whatever you want to happen will happen, because you have a guarantee, a credible commitment, a receipt. So that can be resolved by planning. The other thing that can be resolved by planning is, simply speed, right? So make things go fast, IBRL, because I guess it's a question of what does planning mean, right? Planning means that in our case, you can reserve space to be included in the block. So basically block space, and you can reserve that ahead of time. That can be 6 hours ahead from the time you want something to happen, but it can also be 30 seconds, 15 seconds, right? Core concept is ahead of time. Now,
gotcha.
The cool thing is, once you have bought this space, this block space, you receive a receipt, right? In Ethereum, they call it pre-confirmations. We also call it pre-confirmations, but it's just a receipt that you bought something. And that comes with a guarantee that that's yours, right? just like you get from the store.
Yeah.
Now, you can use that receipt in many different ways. So, for example, you can pre-confirm your transactions to your users if you're an application, let's say like a perp dex, once you have received this receipt, right? That's how you can make things go fast. And you can make it even go faster if you have an off-chain component. And what I mean by that is it's a component that lives besides of Solana, so not on the network in itself, which receives transactions from the users of that particular application. It can crunch them down by its own application logic, so basically make things, more efficient and enable new functions that you couldn't otherwise do on Solana. And that off-chain component, this scheduler, will then receive the receipt, every 50 milliseconds, every 25 milliseconds, and that number will go down and down and down to faster and faster as also the main network Solana becomes, more efficient. So there's a whole load of things that you will enable by this one simple thing of being able to plan, basically.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, heck, I believe you're episode number 491. Has anyone else done this?
Yes. You see, this is the fun thing.
Hold up, Robin. Sorry to interrupt. I've never heard anyone give the example of like sort of reserving, if you will, or receipts. I've never heard this. I've never heard the term reserving block space in almost 500 episodes, not once.
So this concept does exist elsewhere, in Ethereum specifically, but also other networks are starting to adopt it in different ways. But, I think the problem is we in crypto are very good at making things sound fancy and complex and technical.
Yes.
So, at the core, it typically boils down to a very, very simple concept. So in Ethereum, you call it pre-confirmations, base sequencing and pre-confirmations. And that is typically, what you will hear on other networks as well. But the way it's implemented, in details differ a little bit here and there, but they share the same principle, right? Or the same goal, mostly. And this is what I meant by there has been a lot of innovation which has been proven by basically saying that this is a good design principle to follow, right, as a wider, I guess, bigger picture, but you need to adopt it and put it together from a puzzle piece standpoint in a bit of a different way and apply it in a different setting. And in our case, that was Solana, right? So to your question, yes, it does exist, but in different forms. And this is what used to confuse a lot of people early days when I pitched Raiku, or back then it was known as SoulForge, because they were like, well, is it, this thing that I know, like this bucket of, innovation, they knew from Ethereum called pre-confirmations, but then we have other design principles as well. And there's a lot of confusion, like which bucket should I place you in? But it's all about just how the pieces are put together. And in our case, yeah, you will find, parallels between Raiku and other infrastructure projects in completely different ecosystems, but they're just put together differently, essentially. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but yeah.
No, it does. It does. It's just the main part of that spiel is, and I tell my friends this all the time, and I do. This is definitely a hot take, so I apologize in advance. Years ago, when I do feel like there was now I feel like all of us crypto folks are like, hey, come join crypto. We want you in. Come see how much more efficient our world is. And I will go to die on that hill most of the time. It is more efficient in some ways, in more ways than not. However, I do feel like in the early days, Robin, and I wasn't even there in the early days, you were, but people put these complex terms on top of it to sort of keep people out. That's just my 2 cents. I sort of think it's gatekeeping, or was gatekeeping, but we make shit way more complicated than it should be. Way more complicated. And that needs to change. But anyways.
Yeah. I don't think it was for gatekeeping. I think that the audience changed, because when you have a small group of people sharing they share the
There was no need.
same,
Yeah, that's fair. There was
they,
no need
they,
to simplify it.
yeah, yes, but when you're in a small group and you have a lot of passion, you tend to develop your own type of language, and that is exactly what happened.
Yeah,
Now, when
yeah.
suddenly,
It's a cult.
yeah, to some extent it is, and then when suddenly, the big bad world realized the potential of this, and an influx of new people, and some of those new people were able to pick up, the fancy language, the complex language, quicker than others. But all of that led to just like, friction and people learning at different speeds, and some misinterpreted it, and then it just became a mess, right? And I think this is a problem that I think we as an industry are dealing with right now, and it's certainly something that we have tried to deal with internally, and it will always be like an ongoing, battle and effort to just simplify it down to the very core essence, what this thing is, why it's important in just plain English. I think that's very important, because otherwise it doesn't matter your background, if you're technical or not, you're going to lose people. And it's important that the way you describe what you're doing stays relatively consistent, right? And that means just boiling it down to the absolute core, which I don't think we're that good at in crypto overall.
Well said. Well said. Okay. Business use cases. And for the folks who are like, okay, this is obviously very, I don't want to say B2B, but I guess it would sort of be, quantified as a B2B. People love putting businesses in B2C or B2B. This is on the infra side of things. This is an infra play. However, I see unlocks for both consumer, an airdrop, or excuse me, not an airdrop, a fundraise on Solana, peeps that the network gets congested. It's an absolute shit show. Be a great time to reserve some block space. And just like you said, you're a perp dex, or you are a dex, or any type of DeFi, or some type of app, and you want to also reserve a bunch and then pass that on to your consumers and your users. Great opportunities. Very basic execution unlocks. Do you see from predictable execution and reserving block space?
Specifically when it comes to use cases.
Yeah. Like what
Yeah.
use cases do you see?
So one, all of the applications which is currently running on Solana today would benefit. Now, that's because you just make something which is already fast, even faster, but that comes better user experience, right? Now, specifically with use cases though that we have been focusing on is finance as a whole, and we're starting with DeFi, and a big priority of ours is perp dexes and making sure that the trading experience overall on chain is as competitive and equivalent as it can be to what you have today on like centralized exchanges. And that is not just for crypto, but also for like traditional equity markets, so Nasdaq, etc. That's our core focus because it makes a lot of sense. And Solana is also focusing on being the network for trade, for liquidity. Doesn't matter what asset it is, right? But for that to happen, you need to meet the requirements of, the sectors which we haven't been able to onboard yet. And that comes down to TradFi and the hedge funds and the market makers that consist of. So that's exactly what we're focusing on. And, to make it even more tangible, you traders on perp dexes, which is adopting Raiku primitives, will be able to access trading opportunities on shorter time frames, but also over longer time frames. And what I mean by that is over multiple blocks in a way that they simply haven't been able to before. And with that, you basically give the market new toys to play with to make more money in new ways. And a financial market typically likes that. So yeah, we're focusing on finance as a whole, but it also comes down to payment applications, because payment applications, think may sound boring, but think the likes of Stripe, etc. They have a very different kind of problem that a perp dex have. There, it's all about consistency and reliability, because you have a predictable stream of payments, so basically order flow. But if you want to achieve reliability or consistency over long term directly on a blockchain, which is consistently, changing according to the traffic, so the demand, which then is reflected in the fee markets, that gets difficult. So if you then allow a payment application, one, to access and reserve block space ahead of time, it would allow them to get it at a certain discount, but also to ensure the consistency.
Yes.
But if you also allow them then to have a separate environment, and what I mean by this is this off-chain component that I mentioned earlier on, they will now be able to achieve regulatory clarity and basically, compliance, because you can separate the environments to some extent, yet still access all the benefits of crypto. And the way also Raiku has been constructed is in such a way that then using this payment application, which architecturally seems like it's separate from the network, isn't really, because it's connected to Solana with all of its liquidity and user accounts and, all of that stuff. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. Happy to go deeper.
No, it did. It did. We're getting tight for time. This is going to have to be a mandatory round dose. A couple more things before we wrap up. I think the listeners got a pretty good idea of Raiku. When you guys going live? Is there anything when you guys going live? And after that, then we will schedule one right before, and we can do round 3 after you guys go live. But the online rumblings on live say Q1 of next year, a couple months. Would that be true?
Yeah. So I hope we can meet Q1 next year. If we're able to deliver all we have planned within, the time frame, yes, Q1 at the end of Q1 next year. If there is delays on certain components, then I would say early Q2. So yeah, okay. Let's say Easter.
Okay. I like it.
For simplicity. But in principle, ASAP.
I love it. Robin, appreciate you coming on. This was a banger of an episode. Before you go, any news popping off? Again, your episode's going to air in 1 week. Any news between now and then or shortly after? And where can our listeners find you personally and, of course, Raiku online and on socials?
Yes, so Raiku.com, Raiku.com on Twitter or X. And we're always hiring across all the different functions that we have, engineering, non-engineering. And yeah, always keen to speak with talented people. So please reach out.
Love it. Folks, what an episode with Robin, CEO of Raiku. I've been calling it Raiku all episode. I'm such a goober, but I finally got it right at the last one.
No, that works.
Raiku. Okay.
That works.
Tomato. But absolute banger of an episode. Huge shout out to Robin and the team for making this happen. If you guys enjoyed this one, I hope you did. Please do subscribe. Hammer that like button. It would mean the world to our team. Speaking of the team, love you guys, and back to the listeners. Keep on growing those bags. Keep grinding. Hopefully the market turns around. And as always, keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Love you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.